Good afternoon from southern New Hampshire. This is PFG Live. Good morning, everyone. Carl, good morning. Mr. Blodgett, good morning. And CJ Stevens, good morning. Thanks for checking in. As usual, because you guys are the first ones in, we need some technical checks. It's a beautiful day here in southern New Hampshire. I mean, a really beautiful day. It turned into a clear, sunny day, which is very good for the solar electric production. So we are doing all sorts of things that need electricity while the sun is shining. Sounds good. I'll take that as a thumbs up from Kevin. Thank you, Mr. Blodgett. Outstanding. Well, it's been a great week. Less shop time than normal, whatever normal is. But my mom had her 90th birthday party, and we were there last night. And I got to tell you, I can't keep up with the 90-year-olds. I was exhausted at the end of the night, but it was a whole lot of fun. And my aunt and uncle came in from out of town, and my sister, and we had a good time. So we ate too much and laughed just enough. So it was perfect. So coming back to the shop today, I started amalgamating all the questions I got this week and comments, and maybe we'll get some conversations going here. So let's see. Well, the first weather report's coming in. I guess I'll give mine. In southern New Hampshire here, it's 42 degrees Fahrenheit with winds northwest. I had 14. Sky's clear. Carl Tauber says it's clear and sunny and 48 degrees in the Rhode Island. And he says, happy birthday, Mom. Thank you, Carl. I'll pass it along. She might be watching. That's awesome. 48 down there. Holy cow. So I still, I get this question, can I see any snow? And this morning I still saw clumps of snow. Let me take a quick peek out the window. I can't see any from the office window here, but there is definitely snow around town. So who knows? Maybe by the end of the weekend it'll be gone. CJ Stevens checks in with 58 degrees and sunny in East Tennessee. Thank you, sir. I appreciate it. Kevin reports 42 degrees and cloudy in Oregon today. We have the same temperature. How can that be? You're thousands of miles away. That's not possible. Well, merely cloudy in Oregon is a good day. That's excellent. Maybe you'll see the sun today. Who knows? I had to turn the heat on in the office last night. I came in to do something, and it was cold in here. Shouldn't have been cold. The shop, I turned the shop heat on, and it only used a little bit, so that's a good sign. Excellent. Well, no, okay. So Carl's calling me out, and correctly. One of the projects I had for this season is to put a camera on the snowometer. And just to prove the point, if you're watching the video, here's the camera. I got a network camera. This one is an outside camera, and this was going to go on the snowometer full time. And things got so busy that I did not get a chance to put the camera on the snowometer, but that remains a project. We will get that done. My goal is that next winter, you will be able to tune in live to check on the snowometer, but that's coming. So I'm sorry I disappointed you, Carl. We missed the season with the snowometer camera. So how's everybody doing today? Are you doing projects in the shop, or you're running around in the real world? So we have a few things on the agenda today. CJ Stevens says, I need one of those cameras for my chickens. So I'll tell you a funny story about chickens and cameras. My good friends Steve and Terry used to live in Carlisle, Massachusetts, and they raised chickens. And they started a webcam for their chickens. They started a chicken cam. Was it yeah, I think it was Chicken Cam. Anyway, so it became a huge hit. And this was early in the days of live streaming of stuff. And they ran it, I think, for 5 years. It might have been more. And finally, they had to move on, especially because they moved from that location to a new location. They sold the house, bought a new house, and they decided not to keep the chickens going. But they kept streaming video for a while after that. HenCam. I'm sorry. I should have this in my head. Hencam.com. You could check it out and tell me if you still see stuff. But Terry was a prolific writer and wrote about chicken keeping, and it was a lot of fun. But yes, they had several cameras in the end. They had several cameras going on the chickens. So that's an awesome thing to do, CJ. And I'm sure if you set up a monitor for your chickens, they would appreciate watching some YouTube videos about machining. Although if a chicken became a machinist, would they make egg-shaped holes? Would they? I think they would. So we got a couple of requests to talk a little more about grinder coolant today, and then we're going to follow up on some of the toolpost improvements that I did and some of the results with that. Oh, CJ Stevens reports they have over 50 chickens. That's awesome. Kevin says that's a lot of eggs. So my neighbors 2 doors down that way have chickens, and I enjoy some of those eggs, and it is much appreciated. We're very big egg fans here. So yeah, there's nothing better than the eggs from the chickens. And then when they went on vacation, I would take care of the chickens every now and then. And that was kind of fun. The chickens don't write anymore. They don't call. They don't send cards. So they don't really appreciate it. So the topic of grinder coolant came up. And I got a couple of questions. So I wanted to review that a little bit. I went through 3 generations of grinders. So I started with a Harrig, a manual Harrig 612 grinder, and there were 2 flavors of that grinder. Well, there were a couple of variants, but the main difference was cable drive on the table or rack and pinion drive on the table. And I had the rack and pinion drive on the table. And the reason that was considered second fiddle was you can get, as the pinion drove the rack, you can get some pressure upward, and it could potentially put some pattern in the work. And I don't think I ever saw that. Maybe I wasn't, grinding hard enough, but that little machine was awesome. It was fantastic. And the additions I made to it. Oh, and also the downfeed had there was a version of the Harrig 612 that had an optional micro feed on the hand wheel. The hand wheel for downfeed was way up high on the column on the right side. And then they had a mechanism that they added for fine control. I did not have that. But that machine was really lovely, and it ground fantastically. I bought it as a so-called rebuilt grinder from a machinery tool dealer that I really liked, Rice Machinery down in Rhode Island, not far from you, Carl, right? So that grinder was fantastic, and And when I made the very first PFG stones and I started selling PFG stones, it was on that grinder. So there was no provisions for coolant on that grinder, which I added, and I'll show you that in a second. And I also added a vacuum for the swarf. So that has been previously discussed, and I could show it another day because it's sort of out of it. It's on the left side of the wheel. We're talking about the right side of the wheel. So I'm going to put up a picture of what that grinder looked like. So if you're watching on video, the picture I just put up shows the front wheel guard removed because I'm using a cup wheel and a Noga Mini Cool to provide coolant. So that worked out extremely well. That was magged to the spindle housing, and then there are two versions of the Noga Mini Cool. You could either have one spigot coming out of it or two. I always bought the single. I never bought the double. I bought two of these, one for the grinder, one for the Bridgeport. And then you can get that nozzle really close to the work, and you can dial in the mixture, air versus coolant. And that was very useful. And then you could dial in the overall volume, and that was very useful. And then it had a push-pull on-off valve, which if you're looking at the video, it's that black ball in the upper right corner. I found this to work extremely well. The high volume of air and a little bit of coolant made for almost refrigeration. It really cooled very well. So if you were working on tool steels and such that would be sensitive to the temperature change, and certainly if you were looking to minimize any dimensional change from the heat, I thought it was quite effective. It used a relatively small amount of coolant for the amount of time it ran, and I used Cool Mist 78. So Cool Mist 78 is the light duty version of the Cool Mist coolants. And then I think 77 was the heavy duty version. So I used 77 on the Bridgeport, 78 on the grinder. And then I had a 1 gallon. Actually, I didn't even have 1 gallon. I had an Ovaltine container, which I think is 4 cups or something. I had an Ovaltine container, which was my reservoir, and I had one in standby. And it took a while to empty it. So that was pretty nice. That worked really well. And I highly recommend, if you have a grinder, if you have a manual grinder or an automatic grinder, and you don't have any form of coolant, the Noga Mini Cool coupled with Cool Mist 77 was an outstanding solution. I think I copied that from Stan Zinkowski at Bar Z Industrial. Go check out his YouTube channel. It's Shaden H. Somebody in the chat room, maybe you can get me Stan's YouTube channel, but just do a search on Bar Z Industrial on YouTube, and I think he was the guy that I first saw using the Noga Mini Cool on the grinder. So that was a big win. Let's see. Carl asks, does anyone use oil-based coolant for grinding? Fire risk must be nasty. On some of the big enclosed grinders, they absolutely use oil. And I don't know much about those grinders. And I don't know much about using oil for the grinder. So I know it is done, but I don't use it. So in machines that do use oil, I know that they have certain fire mitigation systems. John Grimsmo talks about what's in his Tornos Swiss lathe, because he uses oil in there. And I believe they use a pressurized plastic tube that runs through the work area, and the plastic is a low temperature melting plastic. So if a fire breaks out, it melts that plastic tube, and in comes usually an inert gas to kill the fire. So I have not had experience with that at all. And of course, getting back to this Noga Mini Cool, if you're running Cool Mist, it's a water-based coolant. You're diluting it 1 part to 32. So that doesn't apply here. There's no fire risk. So that was the first coolant system I used on a grinder, and actually it was the first coolant system I used on the Bridgeport, and that worked really well. Actually, I take it back. The first coolant I used on the grinder was this. It was a can of WD-40. So this is a good way to get some coolant going on a grind if you have to and you don't have anything else. You grab your can of WD-40 and you hose down the work and maybe, add some as you go. Totally reasonable, totally fine thing to do. And I believe that was the first type of coolant I used on the grinder. When I finally got my grinding foo up to the point where I was ready to do my chuck, and I recommend this, if you buy a grinder, okay, I would start grinding without having ground the chuck until you know what you're doing, because it's harder to grind the chuck than it is to grind everything else. So once I got that going, I read somewhere that a really good way to grind the chuck was with this coolant called Crisco, all vegetable. So I would put Crisco, a light coating of Crisco on the chuck, and then do a pass on the chuck, and then repeat, rinse and repeat. And that worked out really well, especially for grinding the chuck. Grinding the chuck is a particular problem because you're grinding soft materials, and the heat input is particularly undesirable. So the Crisco worked pretty well. See my video on grinding the mag chuck. Of course, that was like a luxury because I was doing it on the Okamoto with full flood coolant. Don't the sparks light the kerosene in WD-40? No, I never had an issue with that. I don't think you need to worry about that. First of all, I know people say there's kerosene in WD-40. That's not exactly true. I did research, what the constituents of WD-40 are, which of course is somewhat of a trade secret. But it's not super flammable. CJ Stevens says, bacon grease? I would advocate for bacon grease, absolutely. I don't think it's going to be much different than using Crisco. And I didn't believe the Crisco until I saw it work. And it did a pretty good job. And it might as well smell good while you do it. So, sure, I would use bacon grease. Chicken schmaltz? Why not? Anyway, that's what you do when you have to. When you got to do it, that's what you do. So that's kind of how I lived on the first grinder, is mostly with the Noga Mini Cool. I thought the Noga Mini Cool did a stupendous job. The second grinder was the Brown & Sharp 618. And when I bought that, it had this literal pipe that went down to the wheel, and the not shown in this photo is the end of the pipe was smashed flat, so it had sort of that long, thin hole. Carl says there's no trans fatty acids in bacon grease. That is true, and I would venture to say that is healthier than Crisco. Probably WD-40 is healthier than Crisco, but I won't dwell on that. So the 618 had this literal pipe leading down to the wheel. It was smashed at the end. Super simple. And then it had a coolant pump in the coolant tank that did a fine job of delivering more coolant than you could possibly want. So once you start pumping flood coolant, the issue is containment. And the 618 Micromaster was pretty good for that in that respect. And I did have a cover in the front. It was a little messy sometimes, but it did a good job. It also important to have a valve on that so you could use it enough flood cooling, but not so much that it gets everywhere. And it was, it was in using that very rudimentary system, which is pretty common, I think, in a lot of installations, that I started to think it's planted the seeds for the design of the NOS, which was a focused stream of coolant. And you can go check out the website at NOS nos.gg, and you could learn about that. But that's a super simple application for the coolant. Now that coolant was Qualichem 250. I guess they call it Extreme Cut 250 or XC 250. And they call out 3.5% concentration. And of course, if you've been listening to me for a while, you know that was distilled water. That worked really well. And that was my first flood cooling. And then finally, the third generation of grinder for me was the Okamoto. And the Okamoto has a similar system where there's a hose that comes in, and then it has a little section of lock line, and then it came with a very simple, lock line schnozzle. And then I developed the NOS, and now once I developed the NOS, all of my grinding is done with the NOS, and this is not specifically a commercial for the NOS, but the NOS works fantastically as far as cooling the grinding area and also keeping the wheel clean, because it has a vector toward, from either side of the wheel, and it works fantastically well. The Okamoto had much better splash control and liquid control. So today it works fantastically well. I don't have to worry about, I do get some drips every now and then, but I don't have to worry about a mess. And I'm using full throttle flood coolant as much as the machine will deliver, and that works out great. So in the picture, if you're watching the video, in the picture you can see the hose coming over the back. You can't quite see the NOS in this picture, which is, my downfall here, because I should be showing you big pictures of the NOS. But if you go to the website, you'll see the picture of how the NOS is situated. And that's my current situation, and that continues to be Qualichem 250, 3.5%. And I do check it. I do check the coolant concentration, and I do add distilled water. Now, in my experience, you will lose water and not nearly as much of the coolant oil or the coolant chemistry. So you tend to replenish with water, and then I would say maybe once a month I have to add a little bit of coolant concentrate to bring it back up to the 3.5%. And that works pretty well. So one thing that happened is when I got the Okamoto, it comes with a plexiglass front that you can lift out, except it's way undersized for making a true mess like I'm making. And I redesigned that piece of plexiglass, and I custom designed it, and I've shown that before. So that's kind of the evolution of my coolant process. Once I went from the Cool Mist. Oh, I wanted to show you one more picture about the Cool Mist. On the Harrig, there was a pipe thread output for the drain for the table, and I ended up putting a 6-inch piece of pipe on it, and then a piece of PVC, as shown in the picture if you're watching the video, and it went right into an Ovaltine container. So any drippage that started flowing off the table would go into the Ovaltine container. I could tell you I never had to empty the Ovaltine container. If it got a little bit of coolant in it, it eventually dried up, and it was not a problem. But that was a nice addition to the Harrig. Carl asks, are you still doing temperature control? I am now doing temperature control. Of course, that's a separate topic, but absolutely. So presently on the Okamoto, we're doing we're doing coolant temperature control, because typically, of course, it's been wintertime. The coolant is colder than the chuck and the work. So what I decided to do is heat the coolant to 68 degrees Fahrenheit, heat the room to 68 degrees Fahrenheit, and that's the extent of my thermal control. And that gets me within, a few degrees. Everything's within a few degrees of each other, and that's been working spectacularly well. Mostly that helps with, precision and repeatability, and it's been fantastic. So yes, I'm using an 800 watt heater in the coolant tank, which is like 30 something gallons, and when I go into grind, I could turn it on. Now, the other interesting thing, seeing as you brought it up, the coolant heating system is on a remote control. I can go open up my phone, go to an app. It uses the Lutron app, and I have an outlet control, and I can turn on the heater. Before I could turn on the heater, and I could turn on the shop heat remotely. So if I say, hey, I'm going to be in the shop, in an hour or 2 hours or whatever, I could go turn both of those things on, and everything starts stabilizing. So yes, I am absolutely doing temperature control. So that's the story on grinder coolant. Happy to answer any questions. The other half of the grinder coolant equation, of course, is filtering. So when you're using the Noga Mini Cool, you're not recycling the coolant. You don't have to think about it. As soon as I went to the Brown and Sharp, that had a settling tank, and then I fixed a water filter, a whole house water filter, and that's what I was using for that setup as my coolant filter, and that worked pretty good. And that had to get changed out every now and then. It was the big one. It was the 20-inch whole house cylindrical filter, and that was just part of our normal routine, was changing that out. And then finally on the Okamoto, we have the continuous band paper filter, which I love, and then a subsequent 30 micron filter from MSC Filtration, and I want to give them a shout out. So they're down in, I think they're out of Connecticut. And when I bought my Okamoto, my Okamoto dealer is in Connecticut. And one of the options that he sold me on the machine was this coolant filter. Well, MSC Filtration, not to be confused with the industrial catalog, by the way, MSC Filtration sells this very beefy, looks like it came off a battleship, filter housing with these very beefy filters, and that's what I'm running now before it hits the nozzle. We started with this is an interesting point. We started with a 5 micron filter, and eventually I clogged the 5 micron filter. So I decided we would drop down, and now we're using a 30 micron filter, and it works very, very nicely. Carl wants to know more about the continuous band filter. So the way the continuous band filter works is there's a roll of this paper filter material, and it too comes in different flavors. I believe this is rated as also 30 micron, not 100% sure. And the paper comes off of the roll and goes, I'm going to turn off the slides here because they're not applicable. The paper comes off the roll and it hits this like conveyor belt, except the conveyor belt is made out of wire, like this almost like a woven wire structure, except that it's got a shape to it. So it's got like a trough shape to it. And also, as this conveyor belt goes down, and then it comes back up before it goes around to continue its conveyance. So it makes like a little bowl, like a little pond, in the shape of the paper. So as the coolant is coming off of the table and it cleverly gets dumped into back into the paper filter, it filters through this little pond area. There is a float valve, very similar to the float valve in your toilet, and the float valve sits in there, and if it starts clogging up, the float valve goes up, and as soon as the float valve hits the threshold, it will turn on the conveyor belt and move a clean piece of a filter into place. And then, of course, the liquid starts going through the filter, and the float valve returns to normal. So it's totally hands-off. It uses far less paper filter material than I thought it would, but it uses it, and it does a great job. So the consumables there are the roll of filter paper, and they're not that expensive. So I bought 3 more rolls or 4 more rolls. They're not very expensive, and now they're sitting on the rack. So when I run out, I just pop a new one in. Very simple to use. So between that continuous filter and the filter in the cylindrical filter housing, that is the sum total of my coolant filtering before it hits the nozzle. I will add one more thing about my coolant system, is that when you turn off the coolant, you get this annoying dribble of coolant that's left in the pipes, and maybe even that unprimes your pump. So I put a check valve in. It was a brass check valve. You can't quite see it. Well, let me show you. If you're watching the video, I'll show you what I'm talking about. You can't quite see it, but where the hose ends, there's a little brass piece, and that brass piece is a check valve. So it's a spring-loaded check valve. And then the only thing forward of the check valve is the lock line, which is about 6 or 8 inches long, and then the nose. So when the pressure stops from the pump, that check valve closes, and you only get a couple of drops coming out of the nose. And that works really good. So I hope that paints the picture. Now, the question is, should you use coolant when you're grinding? And the answer is, as far as I'm concerned, is absolutely. There's almost no time that I could think of where you would specifically not want to use coolant. So there you go. Use coolant. If you can't use a traditional coolant, or you can't use the Noga Mini Cool, get yourself a can of WD-40, or go to the kitchen and find the Crisco. You shouldn't be eating this stuff. You just should be using it as coolant. So there you go. That's the coolant situation. If there's any final questions on coolant, I'll try to sneak them in. Now, what else is on the docket here? In PFG Stone news, we got some interesting orders this week. We got our first order from the country of Finland. Thank you very much. That order went out. We also got an order from a manned spacecraft company. Thank you very much for your business. There's a project that's been cooking with Mr. Blodgett, and I sent him a quick message. I ordered a piece of A2 tool steel. I ordered 1.5-inch rod, 3 feet long. So we have plenty of round stock to mess with. And of course, having gone through the cutoff tool escapades of the last couple of weeks, we are ready to slice that guy up into thick salami slices for that project. Stay tuned. We will show you that. When we were doing the titanium project, I don't think I reported the actual horsepower required in the cut. So we had a cutoff tool going into a 2-inch diameter rod of titanium, and it was reading 43% spindle load. 43% spindle load on a 7.5 horsepower motor, and then applying efficiencies like, okay, maybe you don't get all that power to the spindle. I'm here to tell you that was a 2 horsepower cut, which translates to about 1,500 watts in the cut, or maybe 1.5 kilowatts in the cut. So that's what that cutoff tool was doing. So that was pretty, that explains a lot of the excitement. That titanium is not messing around. But it got under control, and that was great. So I think we have a new cutoff technology. For some people, it's old. They've been using these ISCAR tools for a long time. For me, it's pretty new. Let's see. Also, with respect to toolpost videos, YouTube in its algorithm decided that I needed to see some toolpost videos. There are 2 toolpost videos which I've watched that I strongly recommend. One, of course, is Robin Renzetti's video where he gets rid of the compound on his lathe and he builds a solid toolpost, and that's awesome. And then following that chronologically, Silos Garage did a toolpost video on a toolpost design that I thought was also very sweet. Nice job. He built a solid toolpost out of ductile iron, but he used bearing balls in a circle to locate the toolpost. And I really suggest you go follow Silos Garage, and that was a really nice job. Speaking of, CJ Stevens says, I will quote him. He says, "Hey guys, I know he won't say it, so I will. Hit that like button before you forget." Speaking of algorithms, yes, thank you very much. Hit the like and the subscribe and all of that kind of stuff. And no, I don't have a Patreon. But if you don't have PFG Stones, what are you even doing? Go to the link up here, up there, pfgstones.com. Let's see, what else? We talked about coolants. Excellent. So I got a very, very nice shout out from a knife maker this past week. Elshowitz Knives. He's a new customer. Thank you very much for the shout out. But he also reminded me of something that he started doing. He thought it was a good idea, but it was a bad idea, and we had a little conversation about it. And I'll summarize it by saying, and this sounds a lot like our lapping discussions with the conditioning lap and the working lap. When you use PFG stones, you're conditioning the stones together. And in lapping, we identify one of the 2 identical laps as being the conditioning lap. And that's for a reason. That's because we are literally shaping the laps by which one is on top and which one is on the bottom, because we want to control the shape. And I've made the claim before that you don't use a perfectly flat lap to get a perfectly flat surface. So you actually need the control to bring the working lap either into concavity or convexity. Oh, yeah, thanks. Yeah, before we leave tool posts, thank you very much. Carl Tauber reminds me that Cutting Edge Engineering, and I don't think I've seen his video, and Adam Booth have done toolpost mods. So Adam did a really good job on his American Pacemaker toolpost. Good job, Adam. And that is extremely similar to the experience I just went through on the TL1, in that he replaced his T-nut with a custom part, and it had some really nice features. And I didn't go that far, and we'll talk about that in a minute because that topic is coming up. But Adam also contributed to the art of tightening up your tool posts. So thank you very much, Carl, for that. So getting back to the PFG Stones and how it relates to laps. So we want the capability of creating a convex or concave surface on our laps. Remember, we're dealing with nanometers in order to control our work, which we then measure to see how we're doing. However, in the case of PFG stones, we pretty much want them flat. So if you read the product information page, which is pfg.gg or pfgstones.com, either one will take you right to that page. I say that you should randomize which stone is the conditioning stone and which stone is the working stone, and you should also randomize how, which sides you're putting up against the other one, and how they're rotated. And by just changing it up, you are distributing the wear and you're maintaining flatness. The challenge was, if you choose one stone and say, that's my conditioning stone, and I'm going to rub the stone I'm using on top of it all the time, now you're asking for it, right? You're always wearing one stone on the work pieces, and you are tending toward a concavity, to a concave surface on that stone. No. For PFG stones, you want to truly randomize it. Also, there's nothing wrong with putting the brown or coarse side on the red or fine side and conditioning that. No problem. So change it up, spread it out, spread the love, and that's the right thing to do. So we had this. We privately had that conversation, and he was appreciative of it and made an adjustment to his workflow. So I just wanted to share that information, that is best practice, okay, for PFG stones. Rotate the Stones. That's our new hit single, Rotate the Stones. There was some talk on Instagram about, actually, Machine Shop 10EE, who's down south at a technical school on the river, was talking about epoxy floors, and he wants to do a white epoxy floor. And if anybody has any specific wisdom on that, send a message over to Machine Shop. Machine Shop 10EE. I know that John Grimsmo up at Grimsmo Knives has a white epoxy floor, and he loves it, and it creates a really nice, clean environment. And I think it's cool. Also, Aaron Walla was talking about floor colors. We were interacting with that. Same thing, picking a floor coating and picking a floor color sounds trivial, right? But you have to make a decision. If you do something like white epoxy, you will see every speck of dirt. You might want to see every speck of dirt, especially if you're trying to keep a super clean environment. I just found it interesting how both of them were starting to talk about floor coatings this week. My floor coating is probably a Home Depot-ish floor paint that was done by a previous owner with the flecks in it, the color flecks in it, and it's fine. I love it. And it's not as rugged as an epoxy coating. Let's see. Another topic that came up this week is 3D printers. So John Saunders published a video on NYC CNC YouTube channel, in which he discusses that they got a new printer called a Bambu, Bambu, and it is a multi-filament capable printer that is in a very stiff frame configuration, which is excellent. It does all sorts of interesting feedback for measuring the first layer, properties, measuring the bed level, but also measuring the work using LiDAR, allegedly. We're about to learn something new from Kevin. So let me just finish this topic, and then I'm going to ask you what you mean, Kevin. So K-Bonk says he loves his wood floor till he drops a 3mm screw. Yeah. But you know what? If all you got is a wood floor, that's what you got. So that's funny. So anyway, go watch John Saunders' video on NYC CNC about this new Bambu printer. It sounds really interesting, and between its very stiff construction and its feedback mechanisms as far as using, and I may be misspeaking here, but I think they're using LiDAR to observe what's going on in the cavity. Plus, it's an enclosed space, right? It's an enclosure, so they got temperature control. The thing flies. It moves very quickly, and it is trying to be the "it just works" printer. And so far, I'm hearing good things. I went to MHM Machining, Adam Brunette, and I asked him about what he thought, because he is an expert in 3D printing, and he's building this magnificent, huge 3D printer. I mean, really huge. I won't steal his thunder, but stay tuned. And he thought it was a solid machine also. So I've never had my hands on it. I probably am not going to be writing a check for one, but it sure does look interesting. And it is allegedly designed and built by the same folks that do the DJI drone. Again, no experience with that, but it sounds like this printer is one to watch. Kevin Blodgett says, did you see the new PRUSA upgrade? So do you mean upgrade, or do you mean the new PRUSA? Because I know that PRUSA came out with a soon to arrive, not ready for ordering, I believe, multi-filament, multi-head tool changing printer. And in fact, John Saunders had one on order. He paid for the pre-order, but I'm not sure he kept it. We'll see. So no, this is news to me, and I should know. How come nobody called me? Kevin says there's a new Mark IV. There's a new PRUSA Mark IV. So, but they have an upgrade kit for the Mark III. I will check it out. Tell us what's new about it. K-Bonk says, is it open source software? I don't know. And I assume you mean the DJI or the Bambu. I'm kind of guessing it's not, but I honestly don't know. Carl says there's another technology for floors besides epoxy that is excellent, and he is going to research it for us, aren't you, Carl? Let us know. Okay, well, I guess I have homework. Part of my homework today is to research the PRUSA Mark IV. And if it's worth it, I may have to upgrade my 3 PRUSAs, because I have 3 PRUSA Mark IIIs. And I remember when they upgraded the extruder, I did do the upgrade. That's when I only owned one of them. And then I bought 2 more printers. I will now read from Mr. Blodgett quoting PRUSA. He says, the Mark IV will consistently deliver a perfect, smooth first layer thanks to the load cell sensor. No manual adjustments needed. The next-gen extruder the Nextruder, and 32-bit connected platform provide many quality of life improvements like remote printing, quick swap nozzles, and customizable UI with one-click printing option. This sounds pretty interesting. I'm thinking about, well, I'll have to do a little research to see if I want to risk an upgrade or just buy another printer. We'll see. But that sounds pretty interesting. It is on my homework list. It's even getting highlighted. You know what that means? That means I consider that a high priority. Thank you, Kevin. I appreciate it. We will learn more about that. It's amazing how, most of what we do is machining, but the 3D printing is now becoming very important to us. For me, the 3D printing has been how I make all the trays for the PFG Stones, but also I make fixtures. I make organization tools. It's amazing. Oh, Wes, you decided to wake up. Did your alarm clock break or something? What's going on here, dude? You'll have to check the others for the class notes and make sure you don't miss any assignments. We're just starting trouble, Wes, that's all. And you're welcome to start trouble as soon as you find some trouble to start. So the 3D printer known as the Bambu is worth keeping an eyeball on, and also the PRUSA Now Mark IV. Did they actually launch? K-Bonk asks, didn't the first 3D printed rocket just launch? I think they did. They had like a 2-minute mission or something. But that's interesting. It wasn't too interesting. I mean, we make stuff with 3D printers all the time. Why shouldn't a rocket be made with 3D printers? I thought that was sort of a little bit of an overreach, but Wes says he had adulting to do. Listen, adulting is overrated, and you can quote me on that. So Kevin says they launched, made it past max Q, and then the second stage did not light. So that would be called a 3D printed javelin, I believe. And Kevin says the Methalox flame looked amazing. I assume that's methanol and oxygen, huh? That's what it sounds like. Pretty cool. Pretty neat. Oh, if you use, but the second stage didn't light. 3D printed javelin, that's something. If you use methanol in your shop, I would like to encourage you to use a respirator if you do it a lot. I'm not going to get into the details, but I do use methanol inside of denatured alcohol, and I use that for cleaning stones. And I've always used a respirator designed for organics, but methanol is one of the things that you want to absolutely be wearing a respirator for. It's not like a strong toxic thing, but over time it can accumulate, and we don't want that. So I do use a respirator. Be safe out there, people. Let's see, we covered that. I think I told you about that, and we covered that. So in the teaser for this episode, I used the terms insufficient adequacy and underappreciated overconstraint, who I played bass for back in the 80s. So the toolpost improvements led me to, use 2 pins to locate the toolpost and prevent rotation. And we were fighting the play in that system. Now, if you go back to that video, you'll note that the top of my T-nut, K-Bonk says, anyone know where I can get a long flute 16th inch drill looking for 1 inch plus? What about a PC board drill, buddy? Wes says it was a 3D printed pressure vessel, 3 meters in diameter, And most of the rocket's engines were 3D printed. Cool. So with respect, Carl, denatured alcohol is not just ethanol, because otherwise it would be called ethanol. So denatured alcohol starts as ethanol, and then they put crap in it so that it can't be ingested. That's what makes it denatured. So when I go to the hardware store and I buy denatured alcohol from Clean Strip, I think, the blue cans, I researched what they were sticking in that. And it can be up to 50% methanol. And that is the concern. So typically, if you take ethanol and you just add, I don't know what the rules are to call it denatured. But okay, I'll take it as homework. But I went through this whole process, and that's why I bring it up. So it was, in the stuff I bought, it was remarkable that they listed it as 50-50 ethanol, methanol. So just read the label. I promise to read the label, and I will publish to Instagram, and then I'll have notes for next week on what I found. But I did this a long time ago. Kevin says, we use denatured alcohol on Q-tips a lot or in a cloth. Does your sprayer atomize? Good question. So I use denatured alcohol both in a bowl, okay, for submersion, and I also use denatured alcohol in my sprayer. And does it atomize? I'm going to say it has to some extent, yes. So I don't know precisely. So Carl says, in any case, I recommend isopropanol. Yes. And really, Kevin says the SDS. Thank you, Kevin. Kevin says the SDS. Is that for the Clean Strip brand? Is that what you found? The SDS says 40 to 60% methanol. Yeah, that's what I remember. Exactly. The reason we're not using isopropanol, and I use isopropyl alcohol in the 3D printing lab because of resin printing. And to be honest, it's all about cost. So I'm using the denatured alcohol in the shop because it's cheap. There you go. CJ Stevens says, I spray denatured alcohol to clean prepped surfaces before powder coating. There you go. So yeah, I think they have some latitude as to what they use to go from ethanol to denatured alcohol, and you'll probably find quite a wide variation on what that means. Yeah, I would absolutely wear your respirator, anytime you do it. Now, I'm guilty of not wearing a respirator for isopropyl alcohol, but I did check on it, and I did read about it, and I did convince myself that was not a big risk. But methanol definitely is something you want to wear the respirator for. And I too, I actually added a respirator down in the 3D printing lab, specifically because when I am working with a lot of isopropyl alcohol, I'll wear a respirator there too. It doesn't hurt. So now I have two organics respirators in play, one in the 3D printing lab and one in the shop. So we want to just be safe out there. So getting back to the tool post, one thing that I remember, I didn't go back and check, but I remember from Adam Booth's re-engineering of his tool post was putting in that insert and bringing the surface of the T-nut up, pretty high. And if you look at the pictures that I posted, the top of the T-nut, which I did not otherwise modify, to the bottom of the tool post, which is sitting on the tool block, there's a significant gap there. And it will take whatever the play is in the pins and it will sort of magnify it. So there's a couple of ways to deal with that. One is to rebuild the T-nut so that that surface comes right up to a couple of thousandths of the tool post, and that will improve the fit. But again, I was trying to get away from re-engineering the T-nut. So what I've decided to do, as was hinted on the slide, on the teaser slide for this episode, was get ready to drill the tool block itself for the two holes that are 90 degrees out from the two holes that I did engage with the pins. So stay tuned. You'll see. I'm going to be pulling the tool block, the tool block off the lathe again. We're going to locate and drill two 10-millimeter holes, and the big puzzle there is going to be what allowances we're going to use. So how the pins are going to fit. Not a huge high technology solution, but it's definitely going to be an improvement over the improvement that we just made. And I could live with that improvement for quite a while. Right. Carl Tauber correctly points out that there are multiple types of denatured alcohol. The idea is to make it non-potable, not lethal. Right. And methanol is not lethal, but I don't want to be breathing a lot of it. Hey, Microwave 1 is live from the Queen Mary. Are you really on the Queen Mary? That is amazing. So that's my buddy Mike, who is a ham radio guy and has a great YouTube channel called Microwave 1. M-I-K-R-O. Microwave digit 1. Hi, guy. Take some pictures. I want to see your laptop with with us on it. The problem with Carl says the problem with methanol is that it is not unpleasant to drink, and I will add, shortly before your liver explodes. Yeah, that is a problem. Well, I will go back and do some more reading and make sure that we're not saying anything stupid here, but certainly erring on the safe side is not a bad thing. Yes, Carl is delivering more good news. He says it is lethal, but if it doesn't kill you, it will blind you. Nice. I'm going to wear my respirator and take a sip of tea. By the way, this tea here is definitely has no methanol in it. Though I won't swear about the ethanol content, although I'm pretty sure it doesn't have any ethanol either. So stay tuned for further tool post improvements. I mean, this is, again, small increment, just two more holes, different place for the pins, and the tool holes on the tool post are already, the pin holes are already there. So it's not exactly rocket science. And I'll be getting to it. So there you go. That's the update on the tool post, and I think we've done it. We've run the list. If you guys have any questions, pop them in the chat. If we don't have any new topics here, we're going to wrap it up because it is, in fact, 14:03 on the East Coast. And it was so nice to hear from Mike from the Queen Mary. Now we have to go search on where the Queen Mary is because I have no idea what you did, Mike. Did you go on a vacation? Did you apply? Did you put the paperwork in for your vacation time? K-Bonk says nanu nanu. All right. Well, I have my homework. It was nice seeing everybody. Based on the concurrent viewer count, which I'm watching over here, we had a light turnout today because I believe today is a holiday. So that's totally cool. And we look forward to seeing everybody who wasn't here live today, maybe live next week. Have an awesome Sunday. Be safe. Go do something fun and make something. And we'll see you guys next week on PFG Live. Thanks, Kevin. Thanks, Carl. Thanks, CJ. Thanks, K-Bonk. Hey, thanks, Mike. And we'll see you guys next week.